Good afternoon. Welcome to the Audit Committee for the Redwoods Community College District. Would you please join me in a salute the flag on the day serving our country?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
We will now acknowledge the land on which our college sits. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered today is unceded territory of the Maya people. We continue to live and thrive on this land today. It is surrounded by the traditional, ancestral, and present homeland of several indigenous nations, including Hupa, Karuk, Matali, Talawa, Walaki, and Yurok, that make up Humboldt and Delaware counties. That takes us to agenda item 2.1 for general public comments. Seeing none, we'll move to 3.1. Minutes of the September 6, 2022 quarterly meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
I will second that.
Thank you. I wasn't here.
Any objections? If none, all those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye. Opposed? The minutes have been accepted. We now move to agenda item 3.2, which approve the district's audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2022. Is there a motion to get this item on the table?
I move to get the motion on the table. Second.
Okay. President Flamer, is there anything you would like to
And I would,
share
if
with
I
us
may,
about this?
refer to Vice President Morrison, please.
Thank you, and I'd like to introduce Stephen Curry from our audit firm CWDL to go over some of the highlights of the district audit.
All right. Hi, everybody. I think I've met quite a few of you before. So yeah, I think what we're going to do is just kind of go through a high-level overview of the financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. As I go through the report, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask those questions, and we'll get you over the answers. Am I okay to share my screen, or do you want to pull up the report yourself?
You can do both.
Okay. It's disabled right now for screen sharing.
Okay.
Still shows. It still has it as locked.
We are working on it, Stephen.
Okay, no worries. There we go. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to jump right into it. This is the financial statements for June 30, 2022. We're going to start out right away by just jumping straight into page 1 of the audit report. Page 1 of the audit report is our independent auditor's report. This is our opinion over the financial statements as a whole. So this is looking at kind of that government-wide basis of the financial statements. And then we'll talk a little bit more later about some of our other auditors' opinions. The format this year, if you're looking from year to year, the report's a little bit different. GASB came out with a new format of our independent auditors report. So we typically used to start out with talking about auditing the statements, talk about responsibilities of the management, responsibilities of the auditors. Now we just go straight into the opinion. One thing to note this year, there was a change in accounting principle related to GASB 87, which is related to leases. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But overall, we gave an unmodified opinion to the financial statements as a whole, which is the highest opinion available to us as auditors. So the next few pages just talk about the auditor's responsibility, with management's responsibility, and just the other matters information, which we'll go through those. That's just the RSI schedule, supplementary information schedules. And then beginning immediately after this is the management discussion and analysis, beginning on page 4. This goes on from page 4 to page 11. Very high level comparative financial statements from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. As you can see, kind of the overall changes from the assets and deferred outflows of resources, the liabilities and deferred inflows of resources. Couple things we'll touch later is that kind of non-current liability, that significant decrease. I know we kind of talk about this every year. You'll see related to the pensions. The pensions are really based off of the plan level. So we'll talk about kind of those overall decreases that happened during the year. Next few pages is about some of the changes in statement of revenue, as you can see from a summarized level, some graphical depictions of what makes up the different percentages of revenues and expenses. And then just over a high overview of the statement of cash flows, and then a little bit of the economic factors that affect the future of the district. Beginning on page 12 is a little bit more detailed statement of net position. As we saw, you can kind of see the overall, all the details within those current assets, non-current assets, the liabilities, non-current liabilities. The big one to point out this year that's new was related to that GASB 87, the leases. There's two sides of it. There's the lessee and the lessor. Everything's based on an audit materiality, and the lessee side of it did hit the materiality thresholds that we felt were applicable, and for that reason we did book those entries on behalf of the district. That's that new line item that you can see right here. It's called the intangible right of use asset. In the past, I think a lot of these were known as capital leases versus operating leases. Capital leases would come onto the books as a capital lease liability with an associated capital asset if it was over the district's threshold for capitalizing. And then operating leases were more of just a disclosure item. GASB came out and clarified that and kind of got rid of the whole idea of an operating lease versus a capital lease, and took the idea of a capital lease and now just says we're going to call them leases. So whether or not they were qualified as an operating capital lease in the past, now they say there should be an associated asset and an associated liability related to all leases for the district. On the next page is the statement of revenues, expenses, and change.
If I may ask a question, Stephen, it's Colleen.
Yeah.
So you said that then there would be, I'm back to this new thing, intangible right of use assets. So where should I be seeing that on the liability side?
It's going to be lumped in this long-term debt, which we'll go into. It's in that summary of long-term debt.
Oh, so it doesn't really show on this statement of net position?
It will. It's just, yeah, the only ones that really stand out typically are the OPEB and the pension liabilities. Everything else gets lumped into the other long-term debt. And then there's a separate footnote which has details on each piece of all the debt.
Got it. So, so it's under that long-term debt, the offsetting amount for the intangible right of use assets. The
Yes.
offset for the $935,000 is in the long-term debt,
Correct.
non-current portion.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep. And then maybe just one thing to point out too, is this kind of the overall, the unrestricted net position has always been kind of derived to that negative to do a lot with the net pension liability and the OPEB liability. If you excluded those two items that were required from GASB 6875, you would see it'd be a positive right there, net position. One thing last year, I think the net pension liability was approximately $37 million. This year it's down to 19.5 million. That's really just driven by it being a year behind in the market, and the market rates were up. So the pension at the plan level was actually down significantly. The next page is just a detail of kind of all the ins and outs of the revenues and expenses for the district. And on the next few pages, this is just the cash flows, just kind of showing you taking, essentially what it's doing is it's taking the income statement and it's backing out numbers that are related to like AR and AP, kind of how those flow across into these different buckets and categories. And then after that is our discretely presented component unit, which is kind of just a high level of the Redwoods Foundation. So the next few pages just kind of has the balance sheet, income statement, and cash flows as it relates to the foundation, which that's in a separate audit report, which will be coming to the district shortly. And then beginning on page 19, this is the notes to the financial statement. This is where you get a little bit more detail of some of those specific categories that we're going to go through. The first few ones are just kind of high level, significant accounting policies, kind of just all the different balance sheet accounts and income statement accounts, just kind of explains what they are. As we move out of note 1, we get into note 2, which is kind of a breakout of the cash. As you can see, kind of the cash, restricted cash, and kind of the breakout between county treasury, cash on hand in banks, and investments as it relates to the foundation. Note 3 is related to AR. It's a little breakout of what makes up the AR. And this kind of is what we use to derive some of those cash flow statements. And then note 4, as you can see, this is that new GASB 87 intangible right of use asset. So these are those various, you have some equipment leases and building leases. They get in kind of broad categories is how they have us put it in there. So to me, it looks very much similar to a depreciation capital asset schedule is typically what it is. They just require a separate footnote. And then going forward, maybe we'll go into that liability side so you can see that. So here's the leases right here. The one thing to differentiate, as you can see, there is a minor difference between the ending balance of the lease liability versus what you saw in the intangible right of use asset, the 995. The reason being is GASB's wanted the everything to be done on the net present value. So they want a discount rate. So they want to take what is the payments of all these different leases, come up with a discount rate, and apply it to that. And then that'd be the starting basis for everything. And then what they want to do is for the intangible right of use asset, it's very similar to a capital asset. You're going to amortize it over straight line life, where the lease liability is coming up with these principal and interest payments, which are based on that discount rate. So there's always a very, very immaterial difference between the two. But that's why you would see a difference if you tried to tie those two numbers out. As you can see, this just has a little bit more detail on the rest of the long-term liabilities for the district. And if we move past this, we get into the employee retirement system. Just want to talk about this a little bit. I know we touch base on it every year, and we always say it's going up, and there's not really, a whole lot of anything the district can do. It's based on the plan fiduciary level. And just to maybe just give you a high level overview in front of me, I was just looking at just so you can see why it decreased so much. So last year, CalSTRS was about 19 million in itself of the district. This year, it's 8.3 million. The reason being is that at the plan level, it was 96, almost $97 billion last year. And kind of with how the stock market is and the interest earnings went down to 45.5 billion. Granted, this is all as of June 30th, 2021. So it's always going to be a year behind. We do expect next year to see a little bit more of the pension liabilities increasing again. It's just kind of one of those ones that's driven by the market. How well the market's doing is kind of reflective of what the pension is going to show on all the district's financials. And kind of the same thing for CalPERS. They were at 30.6 billion and they're at about 20.3 billion now. So the overall was there's a significant decrease, and that kind of gets reflected and run through the district's financials under the benefit expense account. just going forward to a couple pages, on page 35, we have the discount rate. So they're using a 7.10% discount rate. And as you can see, you know, if the earnings come up lower, it can go up significantly higher. And if it comes up higher, it can go down significantly lower. So as you can see, it fluctuates quite a bit based off of a plus or minus 1%. That's for the CalSTRS. And then what I was going to show you now is for kind of the CalPERS side. Does the same thing. And then on page 12, just another one is just the district's OPEB liability we like to highlight. Very similar. It's based off an actuarial study. It gets rolled forward every other year, and then there's a full actuarial valuation that's done in between those years. So essentially every year there's a new report, but they look at all new assumptions every other year. So the district had a, yeah.
I'm having a little trouble following you when you give page numbers.
Okay.
So what are you using for page, like, you just said page 12.
Oh, I'm on page 42. I was using the page numbers. I can use PDF page numbers if that's easier.
No,
No, go ahead, please.
whatever is best. I mean, I also have just the report up on my laptop.
I
Oh,
think what happened, when you were mentioning note 12, but you said page 12.
Oh,
my apologies. I may have said that.
okay. So,
Sorry, we're on note 12. Let's go PDF page number. I think it's a lot easier to scroll through sometimes the PDF page numbers.
okay,
So we're on PDF page 46,
all right.
which is just showing, you know, not significant changes to the district's net OPEB liability. It was 5.6 last year and 5.7 this year. So just minor increases. And a lot of that has to do with some of those change in assumptions that they come up with some of the experience gains and losses.
Yeah,
on
we're
42.
just, my page 46 is
There's
something
much
very different.
Yeah.
Do you want to go page 42 then?
I just want to be able to follow you. Maybe it's helpful if you say are we still on note 12?
Note 12, yes, report page 42.
Okay, we're there.
Okay. With the heading discount rate.
Yes, correct. Yep. Awesome. So yeah, with this, it's just it's another one of those ones, like the pensions. It's 1 year behind. The actuarial is always 1 year behind. So as of June 30th, 2021, the actuary has a $5.7 million net OPEB liability for the district, which in comparison is it's not a very big liability compared to other districts. There's districts with tens of millions of dollars OPEB liability. So the district has a pretty good OPEB plan that looks like it's covered pretty well. And then the next page on report page 43, same thing you can see is a little bit on the discount rate. The fluctuations aren't quite like what you would see on the pensions just because of the smaller dollar amounts, but if the discount rate is 1% lower, expect the OPEB liability to be a little bit higher. And then kind of with the trend rate that has to do with healthcare costs. If healthcare costs, was down to 3% versus the 4% that they used, the liability would go down and vice versa. Below is just a little bit of these deferred inflows, deferred outflows, I think are a little bit confusing, but essentially these are just they're not just hitting straight expenses all the time, because the actuaries come up with these different experience gains and losses, and they change their assumptions. They might change the discount rate or just different things like that. So they pretty much take those earnings and they smooth them out over an amortization period of usually between 5 and 7 years. Sometimes less than that and sometimes more than that. I'm going to jump forward to report page 45, which is under the required supplementary information. I think this page provides a lot of really good details for the district as it relates to the OPEB and the pensions. So it first starts out with kind of the net OPEB liability and the related ratios. As you can see, it's 5 years. Eventually there'll be 2 pages of it. It'll hit 10 years as required by GASB. So in 2018, it was 6.63 million right here for the OPEB liability, and we're at about 5.7 right now. On the next page, page 46, is just kind of a little bit of showing you the contributions. The top numbers, kind of what the actuary thinks the district should be paying to kind of fund these OPEB liabilities, and then below is kind of what the district's paid over the different years. And then on the following page, page 47 and page 48, is related to the pension. So as you can see, we got 4 years on the first page, 4 years on the next page. GASB 68 came out a lot earlier than 75. So we're at 8 years of presentation right now. This really shows you that big swing right there. So that's 19 million to the 8.3 for CalSTRS. And then down below is CalPERS from 18 million to 11 million. And if you went to page 48, you can kind of see from the inception when we brought on the pension liabilities, they started at 11 million for CalSTRS, 6.5 million for CalPERS, and they were just continually going up. And then with kind of the change in how the market went, a year ago with the stock market and everything going higher, we saw very significant decreases. A lot of people are projecting an increase next year, not to where it was, but an overall increase. And then the next 2 pages on page 49 and page 50 of the report, this is just kind of very similar, just talking about what the contributions are that the district does. A lot of this is all estimates. So we're just looking at kind of what the STRS and PERS payments were for the year, kind of comes up with that statutory required contribution. And then the covered employee payroll is just really based off of what the CalSTRS and CalPERS published rates are divided by the contributions. Just one of the required elements that GASB has asked auditors to put in the audit reports. Page 51 just gives a little explanations of all those different reports that we just saw, and talks about if there was any change in the benefit terms or change in assumptions. There's typically a change in assumption as it relates to the OPEB for those discount rates. There hasn't been a lot of change in the pension liability. They've been sticking with some of the same rates for years now. So I'm assuming in the future, we will start to see probably some changes in that discount rate. And then on page 57, on page 52, this is the supplementary information. This is just schedules that we're required to put in there from the state chancellor's office. A lot of this information we derive from the district, or we derive from the 311 reports. So this is just kind of an overview of the district's organizational structure as of June 30th, 2022. The next page, page 53, is pulled from the annual attendance report. It's just kind of a summary.
Yeah. Could you just, you are kind of going a little fast, Stephen.
Okay.
So maybe we could take a breath.
This is Trustee Biggin, and I did have a question about this page, because if it's based on the status of June 30th, 2022, then our president, vice president, and clerk designees aren't correct.
It's
Mallory is the president, and it's Carol Matthews as the president. And
It's
so
not-
I wonder why.
I was gonna say, it's not always have to be based off of. It can be as of the date of the report too. It's actually at the district's discretion. We've had it before where we've put at 6:30 and districts want the current members and vice versa. It's really up to the district on how they want to present it.
Just that the offices are reported incorrectly. It's just
It's
incorrect.
like they used the offices that they used in last year's report, and they didn't update it. The page doesn't look like it got updated.
We'll work with the district then. If we have to make any revisions, we can get this page revised.
Thank you.
Yep. On page 53, this is just kind of a summary that comes from the district's attendance report, the annual attendance report. On page 54, this is just kind of a summary that we use for kind of the overall expenditures of federal awards. As auditors, we use this for our independent auditor's opinion on the federal compliance side. So this kind of assists us in our testing of the federal programs for the year. We always test the student financial aid cluster, and then we will be always testing the HERF funds as long as the district's receiving those funds, just because they were designated as high risk. And then any other program that would be over 750,000 would be on a rotational basis every 3 years, unless the district had higher than 25 billion worth of expenditures. Any questions on this page? The next page is just very similar. It's just an overview of the expenditures of state awards. Just one of the required elements of the chancellor's office. They just want to see a summary of, you know, the amounts received and the expenses as it relates to some of those categorical programs that the district receives. On page 56, this is the 50% loss summary. This is just an extraction from the 311 report that's already submitted, just another required report that they ask us to put in there. The same with page 57. This is kind of a reconciliation of the EPA expenditures. Just the required element comes straight from the 311 report. On page 58, I like to say this is a pretty useful schedule for users of the financial statements. Essentially, I think it helps take people who are reading the financials to understand how do we get to that like ultimate net position that's in that statement of net position that you guys saw earlier. A lot of the times everybody's familiar with where their fund balance is at, but they always wonder how do we end up at that, you know, that $92 million. And these are kind of the items that do that. So, you know, a lot of the capital assets would get added on, and the outflows would get added on. And then, you know, all the debt related stuff would be a decrease. So it's what I call is like the off fund balance sheet items is how we get to that area. And then on the next page, which is for your district, is a little bit of information on the changes of the activity on how those numbers get there too. Not a lot of districts present this, but you guys do, and it's really helpful, just like the previous page, just kind of how to get to those final figures. Page 60 and page 61 is just notes to those schedules, just kind of a high level explaining what each schedule was. And then I'm going to shoot forward to page 62 if there's no questions. So beginning on page, yeah?
No, we're
Oh.
good.
Okay, so beginning on page 62, this is our independent auditor's report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. There's a lot going on in that sentence, but essentially what it's saying is not only are we given an opinion on the financial statements as a whole, as we saw earlier, but we're gonna give an opinion on the district's internal controls. So we're looking at internal controls as over areas such as like expenditures, cash receipts, payroll. We pull samples, we provide the district with these samples, and we just go through to make sure that the procedures that are in place are being followed. And if there's any issues, we usually will work with management to see if there was a reason why something was, you know, fell out of the typical procedures. With that, we gave an unmodified opinion. We had no issues with that. Everything looked good.
So Stephen, I was actually looking for that language, unmodified opinion, because that's the language I'm used to. So are you still using that language? Is that in, for example, is that somewhere on page 62?
No, you'll never see where it says unmodified. It's just what it's called. It's a clean opinion. There is a summary, which is at the end of all of it, is where the required summary is to be of all these, where we do say unmodified in there, but nowhere do you in the actual audit opinion say like the word unmodified. Just kind of, it's how GASB issues and has us issue our opinions.
Okay, because yeah, I was looking for that language at the very beginning of the report, the unmodified opinion.
Yeah, we don't write the opinions. It comes from GASB. They essentially say if the only time you would see that it wouldn't be an unmodified opinion, we would actually put something in there that says like basis for modified opinion. If it doesn't say any basis for modified opinion, it's always an unmodified opinion. Just kind of, I think that's just accounting language.
I think this is
Yeah,
relatively new.
yeah, because I gotta tell you, I was really looking for that language.
I was too at the very beginning.
Page 69.
I thought, whoa, what's the opinion here? Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So if I scroll forward, you'd see them here, but yes, you're right. They've never been into the independent auditor's opinions. This always just been the summary schedule where you would see that at. So on page 64, this is the independent auditor's report on on compliance for each major federal program. So this is our federal audit. So essentially, like we're saying, so talks about basis for opinion, but it doesn't really say like unmodified opinion. It just says we're given an opinion on it. Always you usually default to unmodified unless you saw a basis for modified opinion. Same thing. So for the federal program, we gave an unmodified opinion with no exceptions. We stated that we looked at various federal programs, which you'll see at the summary at the end, and then nothing with that, no findings, no question costs. And then the last opinion is going to be on page 67. And this is our auditor's opinion on the state compliance. And this has to do with the Chancellor's office. They release this set number of programs every year that they ask us as auditors to look into. First, to assess whether or not it's applicable, and if it's applicable, to do some required procedures that they establish for us to request. So that would be on page 68, where you'd see the different programs that they want us to look into. Same thing, unmodified opinion with no exceptions noted. So with that, on page 69 is kind of that summary, as you can see, related to those opinions. So the first one is the financial statements, the unmodified opinion, which was that first one we looked at. It kind of covers everything from that first financial to that in the control one. So we're saying internal control or financial, any material weaknesses identified, no. Significant deficiencies, none noted, and non-compliances, no. Same thing for the federal awards, material weaknesses, no. Significant deficiencies, none noted, unmodified with no for any type of compliance. The dollar between type A and type B is 750,000, and then that summary that you're seeing right here is the summary of the major federal programs that we test for the district as it relates to the federal award section of the reports. And then the last part is the state awards, same thing. No material weaknesses identified. Any significant deficiencies, we had none noted with the unmodified opinion. And then on the next few pages, if we had findings, we would have those stated out, but we did not have any financial statement findings, no federal award findings, or state award findings. And then the very last page of the report is if there was prior year findings, we would have a summary just detailing, hey, these are what we had as of June 30th, 2021. If they were rollover findings, we would state at the bottom that they were repeated in 2022. And with that, that's kind of the overview of the financial statements. Does anybody have any questions on that? Or wants to go to a specific page and look at anything?
May I ask Vice Morrison a question?
Yes, ma'am.
President Morrison, is there something from your perspective that stands out in this report?
No, there's nothing from my perspective that stands out. It, like you, I try to automatically search for the modified or unmodified as soon as I get my eyes on a draft.
Right.
So that's what I look for, but nothing really specifically.
But what, I guess another question I would have is changes from last year's report to this year's report. Did you see anything that stood out to you? Either how we've improved or stayed the same, or?
I have to say that I think the process for preparing for the audit, and as well as once we get to the point where we have all of the audit requests fulfilled for the auditors, it feels like with our team that we're working with and that been working with this audit team for several years now, it just felt like we were missing something because it's gotten much more smooth.
Oh,
So I think from not just the report, but getting to the report, that's the difference that I noticed. It was less painful this year.
oh, well, that's wonderful to hear.
Less painful.
Still painful, but less painful, okay.
Yeah, maybe one thing too is I know as auditors, we've been trying to streamline as much as we can. As an audit firm for us, we try to do as much testing without having to interrupt employees of the district. We understand everybody has a busy job and staffing is always essential. So we try to pull samples and find the easiest way to test that support out without having to bug members and always, sit down or be on Zooms with them. If we know that there's another request that satisfies testing of another area, we can kind of piggyback off that for testing. And then we try to update our portal to be as user-friendly for all of our districts. So we hope the district finds that helpful.
If I guess I can, I'm sharing. So it seems to me, I've looked at probably too many reports over the years, either from this committee or from the board position. And I recall at some point seeing what I guess I want to refer to as an executive summary, but maybe I'm confusing it with some other report. Do you ever, or did you ever provide just an executive summary, kind of a one-pager? And I guess that's what all these several pages are in the beginning, pages 1 through 3. I guess that's your executive summary?
Yeah, that's kind of the high-level overview. We do, and we don't do very many of them, but there's this thing called a PAFR that is really cool. It's kind of just an MD&A, but without a lot of the language and just a lot of nice looking charts and pictures just showing kind of the differences. I actually don't know. I think maybe one of our clients do it, but most of our clients do not. It's really just a graphical depiction of the MD&A that would have kind of a summary showing the district, charts, kind of how things are moving around and things like that we do offer our districts if they ever wanted that.
What's that acronym you're using?
It's called a PAFR.
MB.
PAFR. It's not really a big thing here in California, but it's offered. It's called the Popular Annual Financial Report. It's a program that one of our partners was doing heavily in their Arizona practice, and
I'm not asking. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I don't think we need for you to do more for us. I guess I just did recall in the past seeing just kind of a one-page executive summary. I'm looking at my colleagues. Am I making this up?
No, I don't think so.
It's like a management letter or something.
Yeah, exactly.
From the past.
oh,
I think he was saying.
you might think of the management letter, which is it's another like opinion letter. It's got like 5 paragraphs that we just put into a letter, sign it, and send it. We can send that over. Essentially, it doesn't really have any financial information. It just says, it's almost like what I would call a rep letter, but it's a rep letter from us to you.
What's a rep?
So there's
What is it?
it's very much,
Rep.
it's us making representations to the board, just essentially saying, we did the audit, we had no findings, and if there was, here's a summary of them below. Just a quick
I think
piece.
that's that sounds very nice. This repping thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, we can send that
Better
over
than
just
the
after
PAFR.
this. It's a small 1-page summary. It doesn't really, there's no financials in it. It's just saying what we did.
Okay. And
Yep.
it says unmodified.
I'll double check. I'm not even sure if it says that in there. I think the only time you're ever going to see that anymore is in the summary, unfortunately.
Alrighty.
But maybe back in the day, they used to call them the qualified opinions,
Yes, yeah, we've seen those.
Mhm.
and the headers were a little bit different. But I think just with GASB, they've changed our audit opinion so much on us that they've kind of removed a lot of that language. So yeah, never do you ever. And I'm with you on it. You would almost have like, instead of where it says opinions, you would think it would just say unmodified opinion as the header. Or something.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Or something. Or PAFR. Yeah, I don't think we need a PAFR, but yeah, management letters are nice.
Mhm.
But only if they say something substantive.
Okay, yeah, we'll send it over to you and see if you like it.
Okay.
Awesome. Any other questions as far as the financials or anything?
Oh, it sounds like, our team, headed by Vice President Morrison, is doing an excellent job. As have your team. Thank you for
Yes.
pulling this all together.
Yes, they have been great to work with, super responsive, and provide everything to us in a timely manner. So they've been awesome.
Good to hear, good to know. Well,
Thank you.
I'm seeing no further questions. You can probably go have your lunch by now. It's probably late.
Do you want me for the regular board just to do a high level summary?
That might be real nice. I would be very reluctant to do it myself. I would just be talking PAFRs and
I can.
whatever.
Well, a lot of the times what I'll do is just hit the opinions and just go
Yeah,
to the
that's
findings.
great. Perfect.
Okay, because I know sometimes when I do that, I do get questions where you skipped 70 out of the 80 pages.
Well, no, they won't want that.
They
Okay.
won't want those.
Sounds good.
So to be respectful of your time, I'm looking at our agenda, and, we probably won't be getting to that. It's agenda item 5.1, so we could get to it fairly quickly. It'll probably be at least 30 minutes into the meeting before we get into that.
Sounds good.
That would be great if you could do that, Stephen.
Will do. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
They talk a language that is,
He does talk fast. He talked fast last time as well.
so, well, we have another agenda item.
You have to approve this, you have to vote.
Can I ask
We have to vote.
Yes.
Can I ask one
Thank you.
question, Madam
Yes.
Chair? How long have we had this firm as our auditor?
I believe this is our fourth audit with them, so we'll be,
Yeah.
We have 1 year left.
Probably I'm predicting what my thought was, just do we have to go out to bid
We
and?
do.
we typically do every 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. They sounded like this is the firm that's kind of been, they morphed into this firm, the one that we were using. Does that happen? No? Okay. Good.
So the motion, are we approving this?
Yes.
We are approving it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, are we ready to vote on this?
Sure.
Do I need to change my motion? I had moved to
Get it on the table.
put it on the table.
You need
So
it.
now I will make another motion to approve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? It is approved. Thank you, and thank you, Julia. Talking more about all your good work, and the whole group is assembled. That moves us to 3.3, financing for stadium upgrade and new student housing facility. Action item?
Nope, this is for information only.
Okay. Do you have some information you'd like to share, President Flamer?
Just very, very quickly before I hand it over to Vice President Morrison. I think that I have talked to the board in the past about the need to replace our dorms, but also a need to replace our fields. as we get into our new capital, projects. So I've asked Julia to do some research on how we will fund both projects. And the student housing project is gonna be divided into two phases. One is the architectural phase, but also we are going to submit a proposal to the state for construction money. So I'd like to turn this over to Vice President Morrison to walk us through.
Thank you for that background information. And as President Slamer mentioned, we're looking at this as two different phases. So looking at an initial $5 million borrowing, we're working with K&N Finance and Morgan Stanley currently. And that $5 million would be, as President Slamer mentioned, the kind of more of the design phase cost for the student housing. So that would be the architecture's the main cost there. As well as that $5 million includes some dollars for the stadium upgrade, which includes fields, it includes lighting, it includes the snack shack upgrades and things along those lines. So I did provide some brief analysis that came from K&N Finance and Morgan Stanley, just so that this group could have a sense of some of the different options that we have, as well as the timelines, so that when it comes time for us to move forward, you have that knowledge, you have that background, and because in the coming months is when we'll need to start taking action on the $5 million, and we'll see what happens with the $15 million. And the $15 million is not obviously the full cost of construction, as was mentioned. We are going to be applying for the SB 169 Affordable Student Housing dollars. That is due at the end of January. We are not going to ask for a full 100% cost of construction, because we're not planning on having it being all affordable, that we want to have some flexibility with our rent rates. So a big portion of the beds will be funded, get the approval, from the state dollars, and then the other ones that we call the market rate rents that we can charge a higher rent for, that's where we want to borrow the dollars for. We're also wanting to borrow construction dollars for the kitchen and serving area. Reason being is that if we were to ask the state to fund that, they would include that as cost per bed, and we want to keep the cost per bed as low as possible to help our application be as competitive as it can be.
So these market rate residences, they would be on campus, or would they be?
Right.
Okay, because there was a time we were talking about collaborating with Cal Poly Humboldt.
Yes, it was.
In Eureka, I believe, but that's not this.
It is not this, exactly.
Yeah, this is to replace our current on-campus housing.
But also, we're not only just going to replace them, but we're also going to increase capacity.
Right. But the market rate and the other rate would be rooms in the same building, same rooms, it would just be what you're charging.
The rooms will actually, the unit mix will be different.
Oh.
And this also stems from, this wasn't our initial thought process, was to do these different types of rooms, but a more recent demand study came in that more students were requesting single units versus the double occupancy. So the market rate or higher rate rents would be for those single occupancy units, and the lower rate rents would be for double occupancy.
Oh, okay.
But the single occupancy units are going to be built similar to the double occupancy, so with just the swap of furniture, we could have them be double occupancy if we needed to.
And then the rate would go down, obviously.
And we can be flexible with the rate.
We can be flexible. And I think that we will fill these beds, because we already have a waiting list with the dorms that we already have that were built in the 1970s, and we had no upgrades since then.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm not sure who to direct it to, but in terms of housing, I know some of the districts are looking at housing for married students.
Yes.
At that point yet?
We have started that conversation of how we can repurpose the dorms that we have. Either we can take down one that's already on the fault line and do something else with the other one, or tear them both down. And hopefully that information will be in our facilities master plan.
So is I'm sorry, go ahead, Carol.
No, so I gather that when we look at the scenarios, when we get to that point, that it's a balance between what can we afford at the time versus the dorms not being out old and unusable before we finish paying for them. I mean, the last, I guess ours have lasted more than 25 years, so I
Yes,
guess,
they have.
I guess we don't need to worry about that.
I don't think we have to worry about
Got it, okay.
Well, and the other key piece, that we're gonna have the kitchen where the dorm rooms are. And so the center of the campus, is, as we've talked about, is really shifting over
Yeah.
here now.
So I know we have to wrap this up, but going back to the conversations that you had earlier with Cal Poly Humboldt
Yes.
and Eureka, is that an ongoing conversation?
Yes, it still is. So, Tom Jackson and I have talked about the need to either build up or increase capacity on campus housing, but also look at a joint housing project in Eureka.
Okay, good. Are there any further questions or comments? Well, I think we probably should adjourn this meeting and get ready for our next meeting.